there's nothing like it, because I mean, a lion roaring it's one of those things, and I've been guiding for a long time. Every time is like my first time. It is so powerful. It moves you in a way that you cannot explain. It can bring you to emotions. It can, you just realize that you are so far down the food chain as well as a human being. I mean, the physical feeling, you can feel that roar. You can feel your chest, like your cavity vibrating. It goes right through you.
Following is an interview with Cameron Scott of Johannesburg, South Africa, luxury African travel expert and guide, environmentalist, concierge and host, as well as world-class and professional photographer. Here's Cameron Scott from his home in Johannesburg, South Africa. Cameron Scott, I am so excited to talk to you because I'm pleased that we had the opportunity to get to know each other this week before recording this interview. You're living a life that, as a little boy, myself personally, is what I literally dreamed of. And I went off in different directions. I love my life. I did things that I'm so happy that I've done. But on just a small twist of fate, and I could see going that direction, working in the wilderness of Africa and with great lions and leopards. And I love what you've done, and I'm looking forward to hearing your story so I can share it with the world.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. And it was an honor to meet you as well. I mean, when I heard about it, I was like, yes, what do you mean? Of course, this is insane.
It is interesting with the magic of the internet that people on two different continents and two different hemispheres can communicate instantaneously. I'm in the mountains of New Hampshire in the northeast of the United States, and you are in South Africa, and you've devoted your life to learning about and teaching people about the incredible animals, the big animals, lions.
Natural world, yeah.
So, Cameron, I was so inspired by the story of when you were with your dad as a little boy and you had the experience of seeing close up a leopard come out of the woods or the jungle. Can you share that story with me again?
This story for me is, I think if I have to think back to what started it all, this could very well be that moment. So, like I say, I've been fortunate enough, you grow up in Africa, we're surrounded by these beautiful parks and reserves all the time. So it's really like not really a stone's throw away, but I mean, it's a couple of hours drive in the car, and you could either spend your time as a family up down at the beach, or up, we would say, in the bush. So we would do that. It was definitely my father's influence from a young age. He loves the bush as much as I do, and I'll just never forget. I can't remember anything before this moment or anything after this moment, but I was driving in the car with him, and we obviously drive on opposite sides of the road to the cars in the US. So the driver sits on the right-hand side. So I was leaning against the left-hand side window, which would be your driver's side. And I think I was bored out of my mind back then. I can't remember. I was so young. I was like 5 years old. And this leopard walked out of the long, tall grass, walked out. I don't know if it was female or male. I'd never seen one before with my own eyes. And the leopard walked out, and it was walking next to our vehicle, just in front of the bumper, just walking out. And I remember just being so lost in this moment and just like in complete awe of this animal in front of me. Because, a leopard's one of the most beautiful things to find, also one of the most elusive. So they're super solitary and their lives are so private. And this individual just it walked out for 20 meters or so next to our vehicle. And it's like time stood still and just wandered back into this long grass. And that was it. But it changed my life, because then, I needed to figure out how am I going to share these moments with people back home. It was the moment that I think really inspired that wonder and that love for big cats, leopards especially. But I mean, I've got a bangle here with a lion on my wrist. The big cats really speak to me. So it just became something that spoke just to the inner me, like your soul. And I was like, that's it. I've got to do something one day with these animals. But that was at 5 years old. So
Yeah.
I went every year with my father once or twice to the Kruger National Park, and it just became a lifestyle.
Wow. You had said in a previous conversation that, here you are, a 5-year-old kid, you're growing up in, you're not a family of means per se, and somehow, some way, when you went on these excursions, these little mini expeditions as a kid, you always had one of those little cameras that I think that people are most familiar with, these tiny little cameras made of cardboard. And some weddings I've gone to, there's one on each table so people can
That's
take.
exactly it.
Yeah.
You would that's all I had. I couldn't, I had to have something with me, because like I said, I would come back so inspired and so full of energy about these incredible animals that I'm seeing. And, with separated parents, I was like, I needed to share this experience with my mom. My mom raised myself and my 2 younger sisters alone. And I needed to really share the magic of what happened. And I mean, they were so terrible. They were made out of that lightweight plastic. You would tear it open from like that. They had like a plastic cover over on the cardboard backing, and you have to tear open that thing. Have like 50 exposures, and I would probably just like burn through a spool within the first afternoon, And I remember my father being irritated because now we got to reload like every other day with a new, like I said, we weren't made of money, but I was very fortunate that I had parents that could obviously see a passion and decided to water that and nurture it my whole life. And until I could do it, eventually for my own son.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Well, you were ahead of your time. Now, in the age of the digital, and with your professional cameras that you use to take your incredible pictures, you can rattle off 200 frames in a few seconds if you so desire. It just takes more editing afterwards. Yeah, so you got into the world of photography, but not in the realm you wanted to. You were filming weddings and taking pictures, I think, and you were like, I don't think this is for me. And what happened there?
Yeah, so the exact story, and I remember it like it was yesterday. Obviously, coming out of school, I wasn't very interested in school at a young age. I kind of knew where I wanted to go after school. I wanted to just move into the bush and be with the animals in some way, or do something wildlife related. So that was always my focus. And then straight out of school, I needed to do something. My stepfather was in the entertainment industry, so as a DJ, as a MC for big events and corporate events. So he had opportunities with big clientele, big corporate companies, where he would be doing team builds and stuff. And he was like, we need a photographer, just walk around. I'll pay you pennies per day, but you'll get fed and you can come with and have a good time. And I was like 18, and I'm like, awesome, let's go, why not? So I did that, and that also got me involved and got me a little bit out of my comfort zone, got me speaking to people, all adults, all successful individuals. And here I am, this 18-year-old kid with a camera hanging around my neck. But there was more about socializing than the pictures. But I did that for a few years, and I was 23 at the time. Like I said, I was editing a wedding, and I was like 2,000 images in to editing. And I love people, don't get me wrong, but editing them for hours and hours and hours and hours was just like killing. It really was. And I made a decision then. I remember I had Photoshop. It was like CS3 or something, really old. I minimized it straight away and opened up Google, and I typed in Fagaza courses, FGASA, Field Guide Association of South Africa. That's what it stands for. So Fagaza courses, and a thing popped up. And as you know, I'm a big believer in law of attraction and signs and following what feels right to you. So 2 nights before this, I watched an incredible wildlife show that we get called Caught in the Act, where guides from around the country send in their best footage of incredible things they've seen. And one of them came from the owner of Lion Sands, one of the top properties here in the country. Beautiful safari lodge. They've got a few properties under the name. And it was this interaction between a big leopard that was hunting a warthog and got hold of the warthog, but then they were disturbed by a hyena, and then the leopard and the hyena started fighting and the warthog got away. So for the guests, they got this incredible experience of seeing this like warthog being taken down and almost killed, but then interrupted and everyone got away fine. So as I typed in for Gaza courses, Lion Sands popped up. And I was like, oh, geez, I know Lion Sands. That's that like amazing lodge I just saw on TV. So I clicked on that. Long story short, sent an email out to the guy at the bottom called Alan Ronchini, who's a huge influence in my life and one of the most influential figures. I mean, he's incredible. He's like a father to me. And he just said, send us some information about yourself. I did. And we'll get back to you if you're successful, type thing. And the next day I got an email saying, hey, we enjoyed your sort of motivational letter. We'd love to meet you in person. And that's when I really just panicked completely, because I just had my son. He's 6 months old. I hadn't told my partner that this was even a thought. My family didn't know. No one knew anything, right? But I think in myself, I knew that if I didn't do something now with my life, my son was 6 months old, I'm editing wedding photos, that I may never be able to do this again. And I went, and there were about 75 applicants. They took only 5 of us and gave us this, we were awarded this internship to live and learn at this top property in the country for 6 months. We lived in a small tent, 1-man tent each, in the middle of the wilderness, no fences, got leopards, lions, elephants, everything moving around you all day or night. And it changed my life completely. I put my all into it. I went from being a student in school that completely scraped by, to eventually I was acing my tests at about 96, 97% for every single one. And because this was my passion, right? This is what I had time for. And I was chosen, fortunately, at the end of this course, one of the only individuals to make it to actually work at Lion Sands. And that became my home, became my family, and it just started the entire journey for me. It changed my life. That one decision, when I just knew that I needed to do something, I had this calling and I went for it, and it changed my life. I haven't looked back, not once.
Cameron, the probably the most interesting thing in the world to me is when somebody feels something deep inside, and despite everything pointing the opposite direction, it's so true and so real that they almost don't even know how to do anything but go in that direction. And what seems to happen in that moment, at least in those times when it's happened to me, is that all semblance of fear and anxiety vanish, and I feel nothing but serenity. Don't get me wrong, there's still that, like, oh my boy, man, I hope this works out, because you don't know, but That's a beautiful moment in life, and that to me, that's as beautiful as anything in a life. And I wish for every human being to have those moments. And man, you did it. And so there you are, not long after in Lion Sands, going from this guy, this young kid working kind of for his dad, snapping pictures, then doing weddings, and boom, you're living literally only one layer of tent fabric away from the claws of a leopard. I don't, you know what I mean? But that close.
No, literally.
Like that's, I can't even imagine that. That is so cool. So talk about a different level of fear. Not like, gosh, I have a son, I kind of really want to be there for him, but now you hear roar when the lion. What's it like? So tell me about that. You're this 20 some odd year old young man, and you wake up that first morning. What's it sound like? What's it like to be in a park like that where there's all these wild animals?
It's almost like, how can I put this? That silence is deafening, right? Because it's like being shell shocked in a weird way, because you go from city life, cars, horns, people talking, dogs barking, just and because it's constant, that what's the word I'm looking for? That stimulation we're getting is constant, right? We as humans channel that out. Eventually, we block it off, but it's around us all the time. And then you put into a place that's so far removed from that, and all you're hearing is like wind through the trees, birds and animals, and there's nothing like it. Because I mean, a lion roaring it's one of those things, and I've been guiding for a long time. Every time is like my first time. It is so powerful. It moves you in a way that you cannot explain. It can bring you to emotions. It can, you just realize that you are so far down the food chain as well as a human being. It just puts you in a place where you are vulnerable, you humbled, and you just in complete like astonishment of what's happening in front of you right now. And it never gets old. I mean, the physical feeling, you can feel that roar. You can feel your chest, like your cavity vibrating. It goes right through you. I mean, a lion's roar can be heard up to 5-6 kilometers away.
You're listening to my September 2021 interview with Cameron Scott of Johannesburg, South Africa. In part 2 of our interview, Cam reveals the secrets revealed to him in a lion kill of a water buck and his transformative experience visiting the mountain gorillas of Rwanda. Tools for Nomads is brought to you by Topdrawer. Topdrawer's mission is to make durable, sustainable tools for creatives who work to make the world better. Now back to my interview with Cam. Hey, Cameron, so I really want to hear your story that gave me goosebumps the other day when we were talking. You said that you witnessed something, a hunt, take place on one of your guided trips that really was as if you needed another perspective shift or another portal opened, because you're already there's a certain enlightenment going on here. But could you tell me about that hunt when you saw the lions going after the water buck? And I've already got goosebumps just in anticipation of it.
I get them still thinking about it, because that memory is so vivid. We were after a family of a little pride of lion that we had known very well. There were 2 lioness, a young male lion about 3 years of age, 3.5 years of age. So he was on par in terms of size with a full-grown lioness now. He was still going to get quite a bit bigger. And they had 2 young cubs. And we called them the Hilda's Rock Pride. And one of the lioness unfortunately passed away due to a bad injury from a buffalo, trying to take the buffalo down. You know, everyone thinks a lion is the king of the jungle, but in fact, you know, there are so many things out there that are, I mean, lions take on buffalo. It could go any which way. It's a very large, very dangerous animal. So her back, hips, and legs got damaged quite badly, and she just never made it. But so we were fascinated with this pride of 4, and they used to hang around our property quite a bit, and we spent a lot of time getting to know them. And what had happened is they locked onto 2 waterbuck. And a waterbuck, if those of you listening don't know, it's a very shaggy, quite a hairy antelope, often found near water, believe it or not. And they were locked in onto this one female, and it was so quick. By the time I managed to position my vehicle in a place to not disturb either one, because you never want to put anyone at an advantage or disadvantage. You need to let nature play out, and you just need to be a spectator, right? And I got into position, and this female just shot out, and she managed to surprise this waterbuck enough to grab onto it, and then that male came and just did the sort of the death choke around the neck and brought this female down. By this time, it was right next to my vehicle. They had positioned and fought and struggled and got right next to us. And I remember so well, we didn't speak. No one spoke. You know, it's almost like you're present on that vehicle. There's no roof, right? There's no ceiling. There's no sides. You're completely exposed to this world. And this is happening feet away from you. And everyone will go through an experience in their own different way, I've realized. But I can't remember anyone speaking. I can't remember any sounds. I can't remember anything. What I do remember, though, is watching the moment, the life left this antelope, right? It wasn't gory. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't sad. It was quite a beautiful experience to watch. You've got these young lion cubs waiting to feed. You know, it's the circle of life. But what fascinated me, and this is what we spoke about, because it changed my life forever, and it just took me down this pathway of thinking differently and looking deep within each person and myself as well. The antelope part died, and they opened her up and they removed, you know, the bits they don't want to eat, and it was so clean. It was like a surgery. It wasn't this big mess like people think. And they started feeding on this antelope. And in that same moment, I was watching them feed on her. I had my arm, I don't know if you can see, I had my arm like this on the side of my vehicle. And it was hot. And I was in the sun a little bit. And I was covered in sun protection, you know. So my hand was quite shiny. And I was looking at the veins in my hand. And I was like, you know, at the end of the day, I'm just meat and bones and veins. Like physically, literally, that's what I am, right? And I'm watching this animal. I watched the moment life left her. She's not that animal anymore. She's just food for these lions. And it just hit me. I was like, who the hell am I? Who is this person having thoughts in my head right now about this whole process? Because physically, I'm just meat and bones and flesh and skin and hair, but there's a person, there's a soul, there's a being inside thinking very differently from everyone on my vehicle. And like I said to you the other day, everyone was just completely blown away, and they're like, we saw a kill, we saw a kill, we saw a kill. And it was amazing. Yes, we saw a kill, right? But I just went back and I was just changed forever, because I was like, who the hell am I and what is my purpose? Because we are just bags of meat and bones physically. And it blew my mind completely.
You know, some people would call that a religious experience, but you have this spiritual connection to these animals. That experience just suddenly, I don't know, I can just see how things went differently for you from there. So you're probably, now I want to show people this.
It changed me completely. It changed the way I saw my guests. It changed the way I saw myself. It changed the way I saw nature, the way I looked at animals. Because when you are in the midst of life and death, in a real world situation like that in nature, the way the world was meant to be, and connected on a level so deeply, it has to change you. There's a shift in your thinking, right? And some people in the vehicle maybe didn't think, or probably all of them didn't think the way I did about what had just happened. Like I said, they were all amazed about watching a lion kill an antelope, because that's what you see on TV. That's what you travel halfway across the world to witness. And it's exciting and mind-blowing and sad and happy, and there's emotions, and you're covered in goosebumps. But for me, being fortunate enough to live in this space and learn in this space, and it was my home, it just took me to another place completely. It was a spiritual awakening like no other.
Cameron, that's really beautiful, and it's such an amazing story. The interesting thing that I think what people do is they project emotions onto things like this. And as a little kid, some of my very first memories of my life were watching that TV show, Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom with Marlon Perkins. And I wanted to be the cameraman. Watch the guy, Jim Fowler. Jim will wrestle the alligator while I hover above in a helicopter. And I always thought, how cool to be the cameraman of that, to be that guy in there, like behind the scenes, like almost touching it, being close to death, but bringing it home to people so they could experience it. And I think what happens is the people project an emotion, good or bad, evil or kind or love, and in the bush, in everywhere in life, I mean, but a lion killing a beautiful water buck isn't good or bad. It just is. This is a survival thing. And for a million years, or however long lions and water bucks have existed, this is how it goes. And so when we can remove our emotion and judgment on it, it becomes something beautiful. Now, granted, there's tragedy and life in the same act, right next to your arm, hanging out the window. That's palpable.
It's
that
not
you
even
can
a
hear.
window. It's human nature. It's a way we're wired to try and understand something that makes sense to us, when sometimes it doesn't have to make sense. And when you can see things from that perspective, sometimes I can just take that step back and just be present and watch what's going on in front of me. It really puts things into perspective for you.
Right,
and you don't need to understand.
So when you get ready for one of your, for lack of a better word, one of your expeditions, whether it's a few days or a week or longer in the bush, how do you kind of keep that productivity and that creativity? Is it something from within, or are there things that you need with you to do that? Maybe it's just your four-wheel drive vehicle,
No, so I'm very fortunate that I work with properties that I've got a very good relationship with. I know that if I'm bringing you to Africa, it's not what you think. Yeah, you're coming to places that are so beautiful, and luxury is definitely the word, but the hospitality aspect, you are looked after so well. If you're here in winter, you get into bed, there's a hot water bottle that's been in there for an hour already. Your bed's nice and toasty and warm. You've got like a little message on your pillow, something special about the African night. There's little stories. You are looked after so extremely well. But from a private guiding perspective, right, there's a lot that needs to be prepped. So when I travel with my clients personally, things like the right clothing is very important, right? You want to be ready for is it raining? Is it super hot? Do I have this close pair of shoes, sunblock, good hat? I don't want my shirt to be the color of a racing cone, or the big orange cones or something. You don't want to stand out too much. You just want to blend in nicely, because at the end of the day, you are entering I say their world in terms of the animals, but it's our world too. We've just been so deeply disconnected to some extent. So we got to be very respectful of the area we're entering, and we've got to know what to do. So as a private guide and a photographer, camera gear has to be prepped, memory cards, extra batteries, lenses, lens wipes, filters, lens hoods, everything and anything, right? You got to have that. Then you need backup power banks. I always carry power banks with me, 2, 3 at a time, because we're on safari and a lot of guests are using cell phones right now. Oh, my Apple's dying. I've got, but that comes with experience. Binoculars, obviously, a good set of binoculars. I'm very fortunate that I have the best pair of binoculars in the world that I use. The Swarovskis, the Swarovski optic is like nothing I've ever seen in my life. They are phenomenal. And I will allow my guests to use those because it just enhances that experience so much more. It's an investment in myself, and it's an investment in my company to know that when clients are using gear with me, they're using the very best and they're getting the best results out of that moment. Because let me tell you, wildlife photography is not fun and games. It is real. Preparation is key. Knowledge is huge. But at the end of the day, you can only capture what's happening in front of you. You can't influence it in any way, right? So it's a very specific type of art to capture images and moments that can deliver a message in just by looking at it. And you've got to be present for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours to be able to capture some of the cool stuff. You know how it is, right? Some of the time people film for 5-6 months to get an hour and a half documentary out there. So
that's beautiful, Cameron. So when you're inspired. So I can't imagine that you're lacking inspiration. But outside of this work, are there other things that you like in your life that kind of inspires creativity or something, whether listening to music, or are you a book reader, or do you paint, or journal?
It's a good question. There's a few. There's not one thing. There's a few. I enjoy time with good friends, and family is very important to me. They are an inspiration to me. My son is definitely one. He's incredible, but he inspires me to just keep pushing. But if I would listen to audiobooks. I love YouTube. I've realized that, the world now more than ever is at our fingertips. If there's something you don't know, it's a how-to video on YouTube, right? So I love that. I love learning more how to this podcast. How do I connect my GoPro Hero 9 to as a webcam?
Yeah, you went to YouTube
in like a minute. And I was like, oh, that's simple. And now I know. So that's a passion of mine. I love learning through YouTube because it literally is at your fingertips. And that's something that I'll do almost every night.
Hey, so you went to Rwanda very recently, and it seems like it was kind of side by side with an opportunity to go watch the wildebeest migration, which is some of my earliest memories of watching Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom as a little boy. But the Rwanda, the jungles and the gorillas was transformative for you, and some of the photographs that you've shared on your Instagram page, the tiny hand grasping the finger of a mother gorilla. Wow.
It was, so I'm a very big believer in law of attraction, energy, frequencies, spiritual ties to one another, to our planet, to our home. And, you're like me, you're an adventurer. You know that there's a calling. You sometimes go against the grain. You go against the naysayers. You have to get out there, and you've got to be willing to fail, right? That was my biggest thing, was failing. So I often get asked, how do you do what you do? How do I go do what you do? So, well, you got to go back many, 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 many years and put in a lot of hard work, right? But the main thing, if I think about myself, was believing in myself to a point where it didn't matter who said what, right? I just had to stay focused on the end goal. And I'm still working towards that. The goal is to have a business that is doing so well, inspiring people from all around the world to connect to the natural world, but in turn, teaching them how to capture beautiful images and also get out there and experience these transformative moments, right? Because that's what it is. So that's something I carry with me all the time. And it's a message I want to get out there to people, because I feel like there's so many people like you and I that have not taken that next step. They're on the verge of changing their whole life, right? Whether it be starting a podcast or writing a book or singing or dancing or whatever. It's you know what you have a passion for, and it's fear that stops it completely, right? And I just want to tell people listening and watching that once you step into that arena of sorts, right, and you take it on, now you fight it. There's a lot of people that'll be bystanders and spectators. They'll watch you fighting. They're going to watch you fail. They're going to laugh at you. They're going to tell you can't do this. You didn't study enough. What makes you think you're able to do that? So it's impossible, right? That's constant. That's going to be constant. And I've just always used that as fuel, not to prove anybody wrong, but to keep myself going in the right direction. So you're going to be in that arena, and you're going to get chewed up, and you're going to be spat out more times than you can imagine, right? Different times, but it's going to happen. There's not an opportunity that you might fail. You're going to fail. There's no doubt about it. You're going to fail hard, but I want people to just fail hard and fail often, and learn from it, and because you grow every single time, you grow from that. And I want, like I told you, I came from very humble beginnings, very, very poor background, extremely poor background in Africa here. And that has just been something that has kept me going. And I don't know why, and it doesn't matter why. I just know that it's there. It's that calling, it's that feeling. And I just want people that if they're listening and they're about to take that step, just to take that step. I think that speaks to the nomadic individual in all of us. And we are inquisitive by nature. We are explorers. Just channel that energy within yourself, and it can take you to places you couldn't imagine.